Well, hi, I'm Eric Meldahl, principal of Waller Junior High, and we're here this morning to dedicate a plaque uh, to accompany the crepe myrtles that were planted over 30 years ago to commemorate and honor the astronauts who were fallen in the Challenger disaster of 1986. And we have some very special people with us today to help us unveil this and dedicate this plaque to this monument, this area for us here in front of our West Campus. Mrs. Eplin joins us, who's a former educator here in Waller ISD, and Mrs. Eplin and her family generously donated the funds that allowed us to purchase this plaque and move forward in honor. Mrs. Rawlings, who's one of our language arts teachers, who was also a staff member back in 1986, and in fact this is Mrs. Rawlings' last year with us. She's retiring at the end of this school year, but Mrs. Rawlings is here to say a few words as well. And then our student council officers are with us along with the student council sponsor Sarah Binger. And so I'm just going to say a couple of words, and then I'm going to lead off. And I'm really going to echo President Ronald Reagan's words that he said in the wake, in the aftermath. And as many of you know, 6 astronauts, and then there was a teacher named Krista McAuliffe, and Krista McAuliffe was going to be the first teacher in space, and that was the plan. And so in honor of astronauts Michael Smith, Dick Scobie, Judith Resnick, Ronald McNair, Ellison Onizuka, Gregory Jarvis, and of course Krista McAuliffe. These crepe myrtles were planted in March of 1986 to commemorate again the disaster that happened on January 28, 1986. Ronald Reagan, in part of his speech, said, "I want to say something to the school children of America who were watching the live coverage of the shuttle's takeoff." President Reagan said, "I know it's hard to understand, but sometimes painful things like this happen. It's all part of the process of exploration and discovery. It's all part of taking a chance and expanding man's horizons. The future doesn't belong to the faint-hearted. It belongs to the brave. The Challenger crew was pulling us into the future, and we will continue to follow them." And I'd like to think in the 30 years since then, we've done exactly that. We've continued to follow those trailblazers, those pathfinders, and we stand here today trying to do the same thing for our children who walk these halls and prepare them for the future, prepare them to be brave citizens in our country to continue in the footsteps of those before them. So without further ado, I do want to introduce Mrs. Rawlings, who has a couple of words to say, and then we'll continue on.
I was teaching a variety of subjects back in 1986, and we were watching this when it happened. And I think every school in the United States wanted to do something to honor, especially since there was a teacher on board. And the student council at that time and the faculty and staff came up with the crepe myrtles, not crepe myrtles in particular at that time, but something to commemorate. And we had a donor that donated the 7 crepe myrtles, and we had a ceremony right here, just like we're having today, to commemorate and to memorialize and to honor those that lost their lives that day. It gives me great pleasure to be back. I was teaching high school then, and now with the junior high, it gives me great pleasure to be a part of it and with the student council again.
Mrs. Eplin?
I was also a junior, well, what is now the junior high, but it was middle school then, and we were watching it live. And I think it says a lot about our students of today, that they don't want to forget the sacrifices that have been made, and who knows, in their lifetime we may once again go further into space. And I'm so proud of our young people today, and I'm proud of you, the faculty and the students, for doing the plaque so that we don't forget sacrifices that have been made by our fellow countrymen and our fellow teachers. We had some teachers in Waller that were interested in applying. They didn't make the cut, but they were interested and tried.
And Mr. Eplin was the principal at the time that happened.
I think that I should also mention that my daughter was secretary of the high school student council, and this was something that they felt very strongly about, the student body at that time. And many of our students, in fact, I would say every TV that was in the district was on during that, and I can't begin to describe the feeling. We were stunned, and for once I was speechless. And afterwards, how we had to talk with our students and explain that things happen. And once again, I'm so very proud to be here today and for this to take place. Thank you. That is beautiful. Now, just think, that'll be here for your children to see, maybe even your